Ballantyne is recognized to speak on the amendment. Mr. Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. So if you will, bear with me because we've got several of these amendments that are coming our way, and we'll talk about a few of them, I guess, but frankly, we'll get to a point where I'll just come up and say to table them. But I want to walk you through tuition mitigation. I want to explain a couple things with you. And first, I want to thank my sweet mate, actually, Representative White, who did call me this weekend. He's called me before, and we've had some conversations, and that's what it's about, y'all. You need to participate. You want to participate, get involved. That's the only way you learn. I can remember being here many years ago, didn't know my way to the bathroom, much less what all this other stuff we're doing is. And so along those lines, I am going to kind of correct some of the errors that you heard so we can all know what we're voting on and what it actually means in the real world. I also want to thank Representative Huff, who took the time, and he was in every subcommittee meeting, and a few others of y'all were there as well. And I know we all have things to do, but to see freshmen in particular get involved and want to participate is great. So first of all, some of the things you heard are good, and I believe in some of these things, and I think most of us do as a body, and we'll see legislation later this year, and some maybe in the budget, where we get a chance to voice those concerns and support, primarily with what Representative Pace said regarding income tax. I mean, we all know how important that is in the state of South Carolina, so absolutely we want to lower the income tax. Now, this $3 million coming from the Citadel is not going to do a dime of that, but certainly we need to make some decisions. And so each of us here represent 124 areas back home. We've all got 50,000, give or take, constituents, and so we can all come up with what we think is most important because we represent various parts of the state. What I want to say when it comes to tuition mitigation, when I first got here years ago, one of the lobbyists for the universities came to me and were asking, want money for this, want money for that. Believe it or not, they asked for a lot more back in the day than they're doing now, believe that or not. And I told them, and I asked them, I said, look, how much money is enough? How much money, just tell me a figure. I don't know if we can do it, but tell me a figure where you won't raise tuition on our kids in state. Now, you can imagine they couldn't give me that figure, which is what I told them. I said, exactly. It doesn't matter what we do, you're going to raise tuition. Well, you heard Mr. White a little minute ago, he mentioned that we found a way to do that. And I want to thank my former colleague, Representative Gary Simmel, who I served with, and Gilda Cobb-Hunter, and there were some others involved that came up with tuition mitigation. And so for 7 years, the universities have said, hey, here's what we need so we don't have to raise tuition on our in-state kids. And they have held that line. And I want to give those institutions credit for doing that, particularly for this reason, because it happened again this year. The number that they come up with is way more than what we give them. And yet they find a way to make do. And I want to thank them for that. And I do have to correct my friend Representative White. Every one of them had a formula. Every one of them had a formula. The thing is, they all had different formulas, okay? And we're going to work on that, and there's some proviso language, and I think there's some other amendments coming up. We're going to work on that to figure out what is the best formula. Now, the governor had a formula, and I love Henry Backer, and I love what he's done for our state. He's got a formula. I don't know if that's the right formula. He's the head of our state, so, he carries a bully pulpit, but that might not be the best formula, and I tell you why, because the 17 institutions that came all had problems with that formula. The governor's formula was about 39 million, give or take, I think. We ended up funding, you heard about 50-something million. Y'all, they asked for over 100 million. So frankly, the fact that we have some control mechanism that we put in place 7 years ago that said, hey, here's what we can give you. It's not everything you're asking for, but sharpen that pencil. Here's what we can give you. And if you take it, you're not raising tuition. So we put that mechanism in place, and it's been working for 7 years. Now, Representative Wooten asked questions. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Tuition mitigation in the tech system, by the way, Representative White, we do have tuition mitigation in the tech system. We call it instructional workforce. So you can call it whatever you want. But if we vote for this amendment, if we do not table this amendment, there will be job cuts. Tuition will go up, and even worse, we're going to have more out-of-state kids coming here because that's how the universities and colleges are going to have to balance their books. And I don't know about y'all, but I already get enough calls of why so-and-so can't get in these in-state schools. Why is it so hard? That's why. The colleges and institutions, I'm sure there's waste, fraud. We can find that in anything. And I know we will as we continue to work through the process in the years and months ahead. But they are finding a way to keep their doors open. They're finding a way to continue to provide things like safety Y'all, some of this money covers campus safety and security, their maintenance staff for the aging buildings, because we don't give them the money they need for deferred maintenance. I remember when I first got here, I was like, deferred maintenance, that's a waste. That doesn't sound good. My people back home don't like deferred maintenance. That's just wasteful. No, it's not. That provides for the safety and the well-being of each of our students there. Y'all, mental health. Y'all know what's going on in America. I mean, it's unbelievable. Each and every one of us and our families are affected by mental health. So are our college kids, particularly with what they went through with COVID. Tuition mitigation goes to things like that to help with mental health services, career counseling, things like that. And if it got to the point where these universities had to lay people off, then you're spending more money. You're going to bring in temporary people. You're going to have people working overtime. So it's going to backfire. Y'all, this is what the budget is about. It's about tough decisions. I'm not going to skew it and say, if you want to fire people, vote for this. I don't want to be that kind of guy. But I've laid out the facts, and I've corrected some of the things you heard. One last thing I do want to correct is the College of Charleston president, y'all, yeah, he had a Jerry Maguire moment is what I said. He thought I was making fun of him. No, I was being serious. Y'all remember that movie? Jerry lays it all out there with his industry about sports agent. And you're like, what is that guy doing? He's lost his mind. The College of Charleston president, he told us this is an unsustainable formula. If we can't get what y'all keep asking us, we're going to have to raise tuition. And so we're doing a lot of things. We're going to work and get CHE to work with these colleges and institutions to figure out what is the formula we can all agree upon. And until we get that, we will continue to provide tuition mitigation. You'll see this if you've read the budget. We can talk about it later. We're going to give them some flexibility. I get it. It should be free market, perhaps. Maybe we ought to let it go willy-nilly. But we've got to put some restraints, or else it's going to go super huge, and our in-state students will not be able to get the education. They can't afford it. They'll be burdened with student loans. So what we decided to do is say, hey, look, if this formula isn't working, I understand. Here's what the House said at Ways and Means, and it's in our budget here today that we hope you will support. We need some predictability. So here's the deal. Going forward, when we give you just that tuition mitigation money, and it ain't what you've asked for, it's not even half of what you're looking for, if you want to raise tuition, you're not going to raise it on everybody. Because when you go to school, you ought to know when I'm a freshman, I'm paying X amount. When I'm a sophomore, when I'm a junior, and when I'm a senior, granted, your Big Mac and all that stuff's going to cost more, and your housing and all that will go up, but your tuition stay the same, and that's what we're doing. We're saying you can't raise it on the people that are currently in school. If you've got a freshman class coming in, you can certainly look to do that. So I ask you in a moment to table this. I'll take a few questions, and on the other amendments, we can either have a conversation or we can move to table. But tuition mitigation is vital. We do need to look at fixing it and improving it, just like we do in any aspect of our lives, whether it's in politics or outside this chamber. And we'll work as a group to get to that point. We've got tough decisions to make. Here's one for you. I don't think it's that hard. Let's help these institutions make it affordable for our in-state students to go to school. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Cromer is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You mentioned that the freshmen and the sophomores, this will keep their tuition from going up, but this year, doesn't this exclude incoming freshmen from tuition mitigation?
What do you mean?
Are the incoming freshmen, they're
You're
eligible?
talking about in the fall?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The budget we're working on is for this next upcoming year starting in July.
But the tuition freeze for the freshmen, it will be the same?
If you're a freshman in this spring semester and you then become a sophomore in the fall semester, then you would be frozen. Yes, ma'am. The new freshmen, if the universities feel they need to raise it for whatever reason, they could certainly do that. But their commitment is it will stay that way until that new freshman graduates.
This upcoming year?
Yes, ma'am.
Or 25, 26?
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned that the universities, they don't have restraints, and so the tuition is going willy-nilly. So why would the taxpayer need to be on the line for colleges not being able to restrain themselves?
Well, a couple things. We are going to restrain them, and so that's why we have a proviso in here saying you're going to limit it to this amount, with the incoming class. But most importantly, and I think you would appreciate this, they asked for over $100 million. And being fiscal conservatives, our subcommittee with Gilda Cobb Hunter and Representative Taylor and myself, we didn't give them near that. We gave them a third of what they asked for. 40% of what they asked for.
Well, I think our definition of fiscal conservative might be a little different, because I don't see where taxpayers who are getting up and working hard or making the decision to go to work and not go to the university because they may not can afford it, but just living within their means, And then you're putting this tax burden on them. So,
Well, I mean, I'm sure you and I have a lot of different definitions for a lot of things, Ms. Cromer.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Frank's recognized for a question.
Mom's watching, Mr. Frank.
That's right, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One question, I know not all the universities operate exactly the same. We got different formulas involved. But in the cases of,
Excuse me, Mr. Frank, Mr. Valentine, your first 10 minutes has expired. Do you wish to take second 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Yes,
Valentine is
Mr.
recognized for a second 10 minutes.
in the cases of USC and Clemson particularly, I know their endowments are over $1 billion. $1 billion plus. Why, if they've got endowments of over $1 billion, why do they need taxpayer assistance to freeze this tuition?
Well, as you heard earlier from Representative Newton, you know, there are a lot of taxpayer dollars that we decide here in South Carolina that's important for education. And so we use lottery dollars, we use all sorts of things. The universities have a lot of money. I would say that, some of them do. If you would, and I can share the data with you, the amount of money of state appropriations that we give, you would be surprised at how low it is. So the state support of our institutions, one could argue, is not near what it should be, and it definitely wasn't what it was back in the past.
Mr. White's recognized for a question.
I'll table after you, Mr. White.
You just said that this money is to go for things like mental health and safety. That's what you said, right?
It can go for a lot of things. Whatever keeps the college up and running and keeps our kids safe and gives them an education.
I'm looking at our budget, and it says 117-152, in-state tuition mitigation. The following recurring funds have been appropriated in Part 1A to institutions of higher learning to mitigate tuition and fee increases for in-state undergraduate students. It doesn't say anything about mental health. It says it's to mitigate in-state tuition for undergraduates.
Yeah.
So
You want me to explain that for you so you'll understand it?
I sure need somebody to explain to me how the tuition rate has something to do with how much we spend for safety and mental health.
Do you know how the colleges support themselves primarily?
Pardon?
Through tuition.
What?
So the colleges, how they support themselves. So if they do not get that additional funds, they've got to come up with somewhere. So what are they going to do? They're going to pass it on to the students to pick it up. And so what they need.
I think that's the point.
I don't think I can explain it to you.
Well,
I'm sorry.
We'll
I think
talk.
others get it. I don't know.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Y'all want me to move the table, Mr. Speaker? Thank you. Thank y'all.
Mr. Valentine moves table. I could not hear it. So, roll call. I couldn't hear that. Mr. White gets a roll call because he doesn't speak so loud. Mr. White moves for a roll call to 9 members second the request. 9 members do. Voting on the board, table in motion. All right, have all members voted? Any objection, cutting roll call short? Hearing none, polls closed. Clerk will tabulate. By a vote of 97 to 15, the House tables amendment number 29.